My Lords, given the inherited fiscal situation, we're making tough but necessary decisions to protect both taxpayers and students. It is right that those who can afford to repay their student loans do so, but the system remains heavily subsidised. Lower earning graduates are always protected by the cancellation of any outstanding loan and interest at the end of their repayment term. The Government continuously reviews student finance to ensure that it remains fair, sustainable and supportive of students from all backgrounds.
I'm grateful for that. At the moment, a student leaving with an average debt of £53,000 has to earn £66,000 a year just to cover the interest on the debt. And the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party recently described that as egregious. The budget made the situation even worse by freezing the thresholds for students as from 2027. Now, a month ago, the Chancellor described the current regime as fair and reasonable, but not a lot of people agree. Does the noble lady think that the Leader of the Opposition may be on the right track by suggesting loans be capped at RPI?
Well, I know that the noble Lord wouldn't want the suggestion to be made that the level of debt impacts on the amount that anybody repays in any given month, because of course that is wrong. And as I've already identified, the majority of students don't repay the whole of their loan, so they're already receiving a considerable subsidy from the state. And I know that, I'm sure there are noble lords in this House who feel slightly aggrieved about being accused of presiding over a scam in developing the current Plan 2 student loan system, as the Leader of the Opposition accused them of doing. But I do think, as I say, that it's important that we maintain the protection for both students and graduates that the student loan system creates, whilst being open to thinking about how we can mitigate its burdens on students and those who are repaying their student finance.
My Lords, what assessment has the Government made of how the increasing burden of student debt will influence young people's decisions to not go to university, particularly for young people in regions of the UK where average salaries are really low? Are we going back to a situation where attending university will just be for the wealthy?
No, we're not, and nor should we, which is why we made and have made increasing access and participation in higher education a major pillar of our reforms of higher education. We have, of course, seen despite the student loan system, an increase in the numbers of young people going to university. What we now need to do is to close the gap between those who come from advantaged backgrounds and those who come from disadvantaged backgrounds, which has stubbornly remained where it is. The student finance system removes any upfront fees from students in order to ensure that anybody who could benefit from higher education is able to.
Said the student finance system really is broken. Students are faced with soaring repayments that they never signed up for. Might I suggest, for instance, that public sector workers who will never earn the eye-watering salaries of the private sector, doctors, nurses, teachers, armed forces, civil servants and so on, could have their loans written off after, say, 10 years of public service? But meanwhile, my lords, how about a complete revamp and building a cross-party consensus on what would be a fairer system?
Well, just to be clear, once again, the level of debt does not determine the level of repayments that students make. And I think to suggest that it does, it confuses and misleads those who are thinking about going to university. I do take the point that has been made recently about the pressure of student loan repayments. As a government, we have had to set priorities in the 18 months that we've been in power, and we've chosen to stabilise the finances of our universities, to introduce maintenance grants, to increase the maintenance support for students, to take action to reduce the unacceptably high numbers of young people who are neither earning nor learning, let alone getting the chance to go to university, and to reverse the decline in young people starting apprenticeships. I think that's a pretty fair set of priorities.
Standing student debt in England alone now stands at £270 billion, and it's forecast to reach £500 billion by the late 2040s. So with respect to the nation's balance sheet, how much of this total debt do we realistically expect to be repaid? And what, therefore, are the net liability implications for keeping to our fiscal rules?
Well, we do, as a government, as part of the student finance scheme, we recognise and support the public subsidy that it implies for students, because, of course, we only expect, for example, for Plan 2 full-time borrowers who started their courses in 2022-23, that 32% of them will repay their loans in full. So this is a public subsidy both to those individuals and also to realise the broader public benefits that higher education brings, not only for those who have the opportunity to go through it, but also for society more broadly.
My Lords, I'm glad to hear that my noble friend, the Minister, thinks that there are changes that could be made to the system to perhaps make it fairer. But would she agree that it's not sensible to think that there was a kind of golden era when everybody went to university without worry? I know that I went to university during a time when there were maintenance grants, but there was huge pressure in those times, particularly from people from lower incomes, from their parents who said they could not afford to put the top-ups in. So I do think we need to remember that when we're considering the changes that need to be made. And if she can make it fairer, that's good, but don't imagine that there was some previous time when everything was wonderful.
I think my noble friend makes a very important point. When I went to university, yes, I did it without a student loan, but I was part of only 14% of young people who were able to benefit from higher education. That figure now stands at more than 50%, and we need a student finance system that recognises that. And I would just reiterate that it isn't that this government is making no changes to student finance. We will reintroduce student grants. We are increasing maintenance loans for students. We are opening up, therefore, the opportunity for more students from lower income backgrounds to get the benefits that higher education brings.
My Lords, as my noble friend Lord Young of Cookham put so well, Rachel Reeves says the student loan system is fair and reasonable. Lucy Powell, on the other hand, says the system is unfair and egregious, whilst Bridget Phillipson says it is not a priority for the government. My Lords, with three contradictory views on a review of student loans, is it any surprise to the noble Baroness the Minister that according to the latest Ipsos survey, and I quote, their words, not mine, over 2/3 of the country do not have confidence that the government is running the country properly, competently or seriously?
Well, I do wonder whether or not the noble lord has had the opportunity to discuss with some of his colleagues whether or not they believe that the system that they introduced is a scam or not. This is a system introduced by the last government. It is no longer, in terms of Plan 2, in operation for students starting today. And just finally, if the Leader of the Opposition is trying to suggest to students that they will repay less by a cap on interest, she would, of course, be misleading them, because that wouldn't be true.
Trust, which has done wonderful work in this area, has shown that students who cannot afford to leave home do worse in their studies and throughout life. Will she give student maintenance absolutely top priority, open to everybody, as it was in my time? And I hope that she will be brave enough not to shy away from the possible need to cut university places, have some mergers, and make sure that we are not oversupplied with courses and universities that are not worth the money that students are paying.
Well, I'm afraid I don't agree with the noble lady that that reducing the numbers of people who can benefit from higher education is the most effective way to address this issue. Although I do agree with her that we need to address the cost of living crisis that current students are facing. That's why we will increase the support available and are increasing the support available through maintenance loans. And it's why this government will reintroduce the maintenance grants cut by the last.